Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Goddess Pod. I am so delighted to welcome back Michelle Roberton, who is a great friend and a very impactful person in my life. I will explain in a second why that is true. We are going to have a conversation today around the statement that our relationship to sex and our limitations and beliefs around it have a powerful effect on money and business. And we are going to talk about that, and I cannot wait to get into that discussion. But before I do, I would love to share a little bit about what is so special to me about Michelle's work, and then I'm going to let her introduce herself. Before I met Michelle, I didn't actually know what it felt like to inhabit my own body. And the difficult thing about that is we're all individual bodies and we don't necessarily know what other people feel like in their bodies. So I didn't know that there was anything wrong because I didn't know what it was like to feel in my body until I did. And I knew that something was missing, and I knew that I wanted to explore that. So I was referred to Michelle by a dear friend, and we started working together, and she was able to unlock me from the prison of something deep inside that allowed me to really fully inhabit my physical body and to feel again in my physical body over a period of months. And in the Good Girl to Goddess program, we talk about how important it is to come into the body and inhabit our bodies, because that is where our intuitive signals come from. And that is only one of a multitude of reasons why it is important to inhabit our bodies. And so I feel much more like I know what that feels like now. And that is thanks to Michelle, who calls herself a body philosopher. And her work is a body philosophy. And so, Michelle, I would love to hand over to you and get you to tell us a bit about what that means to you. And for those who didn't hear your previous talk with me, a little bit about the work that you do.
Okay. It's really nice to meet everyone and be here with you, who I love and adore. Um, yeah, but body philosophy for me, it feels like an ability, and I don't know where that ability comes from, to be really able to listen deeply to another's body. And support that body and honor the body, and meet the body in a way that the body has not been met before, in a real sacred and devotional way that enables the body to feel like it can trust, and it can open, and it can let go, and it can surrender, and it can alchemize, um, and it can move into new states and vibrational states, really, once it's really felt that it's almost like the body then feels it can inhabit you and you can inhabit in your body, and there's no separation. So body philosophy for me feels like anything that is in the way of that felt sense of wholeness can be tenderly met and heard and loved. Which is really important, because usually we are trying so hard to fix, where this is more of an invitation to listen and hold. And with that, there's more of a dissolving of what is in the way of our wholeness, rather than a pushing to fix what is in the way of our wholeness. It's much more softer, and loving. And therefore our body is more receptive to that, because it's innocent like a child. So a lot of this feels the way I would approach my children or my grandchildren, or any child, is inviting into an embrace.
And I love that you refer to the body as an innocent and as a child. And when I started to think of it that way, it really helped me to soften my approach with my body and to be kind and gentle and tender, and to remember that it is doing like incredibly magical things for me every single day. And I have spent most of my life pretty much ignoring it at best and abusing it at the worst. And those things do accumulate over time. And
Hmm.
what I've found is that our bodies are very patient. You know, my body did wait a long time for me to come around to noticing it as a separate, innocent entity. And it has been very patient, but very committed alongside me in releasing a lot of what I have been holding
Hmm.
for all of these years.
Many of us just resist our bodies, and use our bodies as vehicles. And a lot of the time that's because we are in pain and we believe our bodies to be the source of our suffering, because it's a feeling field. And if we have very strong feelings or we've experienced very strong traumatic events, then why would we want to be anywhere near the place of our suffering? When the body is not the place of our suffering. The place of our suffering is that we are detached from that feeling and we weren't given the resources to be met at that time. So through a kind of this body philosophy, all those aspects of self that were not held at that time get the opportunity to be held and have a voice and to be met. And this is where the felt sense of wholeness, it's almost like we are embracing all those scattered fragments of ourselves back into our body.
And it feels good.
Yeah.
You know, it really feels good. I mean, I've had some of the most pleasurable, blissful sensations in my body since working with you than I can remember ever having in my life, you know, and I think for a lot of people, myself included, thinking, as you say, that the pain comes from the body when actually the pain is held by the body, it's experienced through the body, but the body is not the
Mhm.
cause of it. It can be, yeah, the body feels like an enemy. And then now my body feels like my friend, you know, my body is my best friend. And I speak to
Mhm.
my body every morning with the breathing exercises that you taught me, and it tells me what it needs. And I do my utmost to meet those needs in each day. And it has just completely changed how I inhabit and how I feel in my body. And I just want to emphasize that because I know for a lot of women who work really hard and sit behind a desk and you've got this pain and that pain, I had a frozen shoulder. You know, there were lots of things that caused me pain, that there is hope and possibility and potential to feel very pleasurable sensations in the body and not related to any specific thing, though also that, but just sitting here now, I can feel, you know, a really beautiful warmth in my heart space and in my chest. And I can feel really beautiful tingles, you know, from my head to my fingertips and in my toes. And those sensations were not a part of my experience to the same extent. It would be an occasional burst of inspiration. I would get shivers for that one moment, maybe once a month or something like that. But apart from that, there was really no consistent ongoing experience of positive sensations in my body.
Mm. I feel we get to feel alive in our own skin, that this is life, that we are a living, breathing entity in skin and flesh and bones. And that's the awe and the wonder that keeps that vavum kind of going. So we know life from a very different somatic experience.
Yeah, and that's what I would have said before is that
Mm.
your work is sort of somatic body work. That's sort of what I would have called it. But I think that body philosophy really does more aptly meet what it is that you do in my
Mm.
experience, which I've not spoken enough about. So let's get to the sex, okay? So So you sent me a few different topics, and I know that you're going to come on again sometime in the future because I wanted to talk about all of them. But the fourth one on the list, which I'm going to read again, just because I think it's so important, and actually it's really fun to say that our relationship to sex and our limitations and beliefs around it have a powerful effect on money and business. And it's literally, here is why, dot, dot, dot. Tell us, Michelle, why this is the case.
Okay. There's quite a few layers to this, so I hope we have the time to cover it all. But I would say the first, most obvious layer, maybe to me, but maybe not to others, is that sex and money is our basic needs of survival. We need sex, or we're told we need sex. Well, we do need sex for humanity to exist. And we need money in this world of form to exist. So they're very, very related. And where that energy center is in our body, it's our basic needs of survival: home, food, water, money, sex. So the basic needs of being human. But if our relationship with money is not good, then it's going to have an impact on the way our relationship is with sex, and vice versa. And this is because the key things around money and sex are things like boundaries. So if we do not have strong boundaries around our sex, and we don't have a voice to be able to voice those boundaries, then we can often find that filters into our relationship with money as well. And we can find that the two things are mirroring, maybe in a very, very subtle way, but they will mirror in some way. And I think for women, especially in business, we can have the unhealthy feminine quality, where we think to have boundaries means assertion and aggression. And so then we lose our femininity in business, which we need, which is creativity and flow and inspiration and intuition. And we can go into the masculine too much, where our no is not coming from our body, it's coming more from a need to protect and be very, very boundaried. So we have these very two things. Are we giving away our sex? Are we giving away our sexual power? And therefore, how are we relating with money? And therefore, how are we relating in business?
I can relate to a lot of what you are saying, and it's making all of these like ding, 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 ding go off in my head because of the experience that I've had. Um, I think for a lot of my earlier career, my profession was, my interaction with my career and my profession felt very performative, that it was not from the natural flow of my desire or my passion or my intuition. And I actually shut off a lot of those parts of myself because they weren't being met. And actually, for a lot of them, I just didn't even know where to find them. I didn't even know where they were because I had never explored them before. And I'm a big fan of oversharing, so I'll say that in my sex life, I can see how the relationship I had with sex was also performative. And it was also transactional. Not that I was receiving money for sex in that sense of a transaction, but that it felt like something I was owed my partner just because we were in a romantic relationship, that it wasn't always given in true desire or offered in true passion or willingness. And I genuinely cannot probably count how many orgasms I've faked in my life. So in terms of the performative nature, to go in, to do it, to make the sounds and get it done, that it does feel very similar to how my professional life was during that time.
If, as women, if we can go into business and we can relate with money from a heart-centered space, it makes it more true for us. And we find that we do not barter ourselves away. We do not give ourselves away. And therefore, we find that in our sex as well. But it's not a giving away. It's more of we're sharing who we are in our sex lives and in our business. It becomes a showing up in a much different way that I feel when we can embrace our femininity in our sex into our business, it's much more heart-led and it's much more body-led. And therefore it feels richer for us, which feels, then it equates to money because we're feeling rich. We're not giving ourselves away. We're not bargaining with deals. We're not, there's been times when I've been very, very skint and not known how the hell I'm going to feed the children that night. And I've had people offer me money for things I don't want to do. And I would have rather have been skint and find some other way of feeding the children than giving myself away. But as women, we can so easily slip into giving ourselves away to feed what is important to us. And this is not coming from, we start to feel like the whore, basically, in business and in money and in sex. So it's very, very important to notice how these three things are working together.
Talk about the whore more.
Oh, it's the whore is when we all carry that within us, that good girl, bad girl thing. But we're coming from a place of whore when we feel empty, that we're giving away and there's nothing reciprocal coming back. We're not being filled up by it. So we feel we are in a place of whore when we've given too much of ourselves away. Whereas there's meant to be this exchange going on, and not that we give everything for an exchange, but we notice, is our energy being depleted or is it being sustained or raised up because of our experience? And that's really important to notice where our energy is leaking, particularly for women. Where are we leaking? And when we're going into the psyche of the whore, then we find that we are leaking. We are not being fed. And it's very important that sex is our nourishment, our fuel, the way we are lifted into our heart space to be able to create from a more authentic place. And we're attuned to our womb place to be able in that dream place and creativity. So when we're in whore, we diminish that energy.
And how can we replenish that energy?
By being authentic in our choices and know that we have a right to boundaries, but those boundaries aren't something that has to come from aggression and assertion. I feel like the word no, when we say it from our body, it has the power that it is heard, rather than when we're saying no from a disembodied place. Our no is never heard. And no is a big one for us, but then if we say yes all the time, then we're devaluing our yes. Our no makes our yes valuable. So no and yes are really, really valuable because we're being true to ourselves and therefore true to the other person. So no and yes in sex and money and business are really, really important. And when we speak them as a woman from an embodied place, we are heard.
So we talk a lot in the program about how to get to that embodied place, which we call the goddess in the Girls Goddess program. We call that the goddess. And that can be a very new experience for women to access that place, because a lot of us have never even really been asked what we want. We haven't been encouraged to explore who we are. We haven't been encouraged to, and in fact, we have been discouraged from speaking for ourselves and being, open and having our needs met. And this is the first block that we have to move through, is the sense that we are worthy of our own voice and of our own authenticity and of our own space that we take up in the world. And for a lot of women, that is the little step that they take out of the good girl, because the good girl is protecting us because of all the times we've been told to be quiet and not to be so much and all of this. And this is why we say, take 15 minutes a day for yourself. Just start with that, because that's an anchor point to prove that it's safe to the good girl. It's almost, for some women it is too much, but for most women they can just about manage 15 minutes a day. So we prove to the good girl that it's safe, because we do not take any journey and leave behind any of our parts. We take all of our parts with us, and the good girl's coming along on the ride to the goddess just as much as all the other parts. So we say it's 15 minutes, and then we get to watch as that commitment and investment in ourselves for that length of time begins to change how we look at the world and how the world looks at us. And that gives us this opportunity to consider potentially more time adding on to that.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry?
I said definitely. Yeah.
I wanted to touch on boundaries again, actually. For women who are struggling with maintaining strong boundaries and who are struggling with people pleasing and saying yes to the point that they've devalued their yes, do you have any recommendations for how they can feel their no, that it isn't dangerous? Because I think a lot of women feel that the word no is a dangerous word.
I feel, firstly, by putting it into perspective, that when we say no, we're making our yes more valuable. I think that was a big thing. I mean, I was in meditation when that came, that I was making my no, my yes, less valuable. So it was like it gave me permission then. But it's definitely noticing where our voice comes from. And if our voice is coming from our chest and a very up here place, when we say no, there's a sense of nervousness around it. And so we want to be able to play with our no, maybe with people we feel safe with, and really breathe into our belly and sit with the word no and how it feels. We can do this with all words, really. Notice how a word feels, and then speak our no more from a deep breath that comes into our belly. It's almost as if our voice rises from the belly, and it's almost, I don't know, a lion's roar. A lioness, when she's protecting her cubs, it has guts. It has guts to it that speaks. And it's also, when it's coming up from her belly, it's also coming up through her heart. Which reminds me also that our sex and our voice they're entwined. We spoke a lot about this, that all the times we didn't say no and all the times we didn't say yes. So it's not something that happens overnight. It's a real attending to our relationship with sex and how that has affected our voice, and where we don't feel safe in sex to say no, and I would love you to. And when you touch me like this, and when you do that, and I would love you to. When we find we can have sex in in an area of our life, it sort of leaks out into everything else. And sex and body is so intimate with our voice. And the way our bodies are made as women, sex really affects our voice. So our boundaries come up from playing in sex, where we can have boundaries and not feel responsible when we say no to someone and it causes a feeling of rejection or abandonment or whatever it is in that person. That's their shit to work through. But so often as women, we feel responsible that when we say no, that person then becomes in pain, and we have become the cause of that pain or feeling of abandonment. Our feelings of abandonment and rejection and unworthiness and unlovableness are our own to be working with, so that then we speak and we behave and we share from a place of lovable and worthiness and no fear of being abandoned, because we have ourselves.
Yes. I would love to talk about the word responsible, because I think that is such an important word. And when you think about it and you break it down, response able, as in being able to respond. And what you said about someone else's stuff being their stuff and letting their stuff be their stuff, I think is so important, because the responsibility that we have is to be authentic in that moment. The responsibility we have is the opportunity for the other person to be met in truth, so that they can take that away and do with it whatever they will. It matters not to the woman. It is not our business what they do with it. They don't need to learn their lesson, but we don't need to feel bad for teaching it to them. In fact, we can feel good that we have met our responsibility, and that's the end. And I'm saying this as a recovering people pleaser. I really have spent most of my adult life feeling really guilty for letting people down. And I even still letting people down by telling them the truth, which might have disappointed them. And even now, if I'm asked out on a date by a guy, or I'm invited to do some work with someone and I have to say no, I still get that little pang of almost like fear, like I've done something wrong. I'm going to get into trouble for doing this. It's an echo, and it's so slight now, but that was once the very loud voice that made me say yes when I meant no.
Yeah. I feel these things are something we grow into. So the more and more we play with them, the more and more we embody them, embrace them, the less effort they take. We don't go from A to B. Like, and that cliche of an acorn doesn't suddenly become an oak tree. It blossoms, it grows into. So we grow into again our no, just as freely as like my 2-year-old granddaughter says no. There's no, she doesn't feel any guilt or shame, and she says no, and it's celebrated. It's about celebrating every time we say no and celebrating every time we say yes, because if it came from I really meant no and I really meant yes, it's such a wonderful feeling to be able to own our boundaries and be responsible for ourselves, and notice that most of the time people are not responding, they are reacting, which means they are playing out something that they need to move from. They are just reacting and reacting. They're not responding to your no, they're reacting to all the no's and all the abandonment.
Which again is not our responsibility.
No, it's not at all. The other thing I really wanted to feel to bring to this is our creativity as women as well. The creativity in business is so important, and often because we can take on a very masculine approach to business, that we let go of the juiciness of creativity that we as women have and we as women can bring. And being able to approach things from a very creative place, but resourcing our own creativity and listening to our own menstrual cycles to know when our creativity is in its full vibrancy and when we're in our resting places. Because I feel when we're behaving as human robots and just doing business, business, business all the time, we diminish, we deplete our own energy. So it's really important to resource ourselves so that when we are in business, our money and our lives and our creations can flourish because they've come from a nourished soil of our body rather than depletion. There's a lot of humanness to this that's really, really important, that business and money could actually thrive from a really human place and a really heart-body place rather than what we are so used to in the world, a very disembodied and a very functional place.
Well, I think also the world and the schedules that we keep in the working world have been very much built around men. And we've talked about this in one of the podcasts that we did for International Women's Month in March, where the sort of 24-hour cycle of a man's hormones is basically how we work now. And the women would be very well served to focus on their own cycles, as you suggested. So I would love to touch on that, and I have a couple of follow-up questions. But the first thing I would really love to explore is that juiciness of creativity. So when is the juiciest time of the month?
Well, we will feel it if we start noticing our cycles. Even I've had my menopause, so I'm the other side, but I really notice my creative days when I'm very like alive and feeling juicy and feeling sexy and feeling inspired. And I really notice my days when there's wanting to be more insular and rest. And because I listen to the insular and the rest and the nourish, it makes the juicy when it happens more, more so, because there's that balance and the boundaries of saying, this is what I need to show up for my best, not for myself and for others and the world. I think it's really, really important. And as women, when we're not showing up as our best versions of ourselves, there's some guilt there. And we know we're not being true. So when we can listen to our cycles in this way and know our juiciness and how to nourish that, then we feel that we're showing up from a place that is true, and then we don't feel that kind of fake when we're with people. If we keep going and keep going and keep going, we feel fake because we're coming from a place of empty and not juice.
Yes. Absolutely. And I think I can hear the women watching saying, but how can I do this? So I work a 9 to forever job. I work 5 days a week. Somebody else puts meetings in my diary. Somebody else is responsible for what I am supposed to create. So how can I build any boundaries around this process to honor my juiciness and my depletion when my schedule is run by somebody else?
Yeah, if we don't have control, let's say, over our work schedules, we certainly do over what we do when we finish work. So if we just go home and sitting in front of a TV, is that really fueling and nourishment? If we're sociable every night because we're afraid of being alone, is that fueling and nourishing? It's our relationships, our environment. Is that fueling us or is it depleting us? It's not just our like I said at the beginning, it's not just our business or our money, it's everything around it. Everything always is. Like, life is one container, and everything in that container has impact on everything else. So yes, we may be working 9 to 5, but what can we do before 9 o'clock in the morning when we wake up? If we're just waking up and getting straight on our phones and going into business, that's not good for us. That's not nourishing.
Yeah.
And when we finish at 5, what are we doing then? And our, our free time, let's say, it's really important to notice. And often, again, the no shows up if we've been invited out and we're in depletion, but we don't want to let our friends down, we don't want to let our family down. This is, again, the sacrifice of the whore. She's going out there and she's whoring her energy from a place of depletion. Yeah. And I really hope that people are not listening to the word whore and thinking I'm coming from a derogatory place at all. I'm not. It's we all do it. Because we've been taught to, with the good girl, the people pleasing.
Yeah.
When actually we would be more of a good girl if we were coming from a place of full, the impact we have on people and the impact that has on our lives, and just being around people that are full. That's the goodness. That's the riches. The good girl isn't the one who shrinks and says, yes, sir, no, sir, how much?
Well, and that's why we call it the goddess, because it is so full. There's such a fullness, and there is a boundariedness, a strength in that. And there's a truth in what's spoken and an authenticity in what is created. The creation energy is used in service to her own authenticity, and that becomes the gift. And it is always the gift that the world needs. And this is what the good girl is invited to understand, is that she's working so hard to make everyone happy. But if she could just step back and let go of some of these outdated limiting beliefs and fears, very real fears at what the consequences will be if she does come out of this shell, she will find that the goddess is able to not just, meet all those needs, but really meet them in their fullness. And that I found in my life that when I stopped trying so hard to fix everybody else's life and to fix everybody else and to make everything better, everything just got better on its own, and I didn't have to really do much of anything. I was working so hard, and I was actually in many ways making things more complicated and more difficult, and, even for the people who I love the most.
Mm.
So I think there is a real invitation. And I think when the good girl does see that, she can kind of relax a little bit. I'm always saying that the good girl can just put her feet up and eat chocolate biscuits. Her job is done. She got us here. It's the goddess's turn to take over and to allow the magic of our individuality to meet the world in the way that the world needs to be met. And that is why this work to me is so important, because we can all look around at the world right now and we can see how much it needs every single goddess that we can marshal. It needs us. So this is why we do this, why we have these conversations, and why we make such an effort to meet other women who are very rightly scared and exhausted. And it is, I've been there, and in some days I am still there, because the process, as you say, is an ongoing process. Like all of these things, it is not overnight. For all of them, for meeting your body and for becoming embodied, and for meeting your no and for discovering your no, and then for finding your yes and finding your authenticity. These are not things that happen overnight. As much as I would love to say to every woman, here is your card. You are now in the goddess club and you don't have to do any work for this to happen. But there is so much depth in the work, and it's a necessary part of being human. You know, we walked ourselves in and we walk ourselves out. So I wanted to ask about a correlation, and I don't know if this is going to resonate or not, but what might it say about a woman's relationship to money if she's just has absolutely no desire for sex?
I'm really glad you've asked me that because it was fizzing and our relationship, our perspective of sex, it's really important. It changes because we've been taught that sex is penetration to ejaculation. We've been taught that sex is two people. And what I'm speaking and wish to speak to, and I am speaking of, is sexual energy. That sensation of arousal that we get. If we feel that it and don't give it out through masturbation or sex, but allow it to simmer in our body, we start to notice that this is actually a fuel for us to be creating from and living from and feeling the whole of our body with aliveness from. And if we are just going with the act of sex, we're always looking at a transactional, we're always looking at two people, we're always looking at an exchange. So we want to come to a place as I own my sex. I own this feeling of sexual energy. People who say, oh, I don't need sex anymore, or I don't feel sexy anymore, when they're saying that, they're cutting off all their creativity, their color, their vibrancy, because they are saying they feel that around the act of sex. Okay, if you feel that around the act of sex, but what about you as a sexual being that has this energy? And women have a very powerful sexual energy. We are designed to. We create babies. uh, and when we can step into the power of that, unrelated to other people, unrelated to the act of sex, then we start to relate in a much different way to our own sex. You know, sex for me doesn't mean masturbation and it doesn't mean another person. I feel like a very well-sexed, well-fucked woman, let's say. I haven't had the act of sex for quite a while, but sex is still fizzing and moving through me as a source of creativity and inspiration and feeling good, feeling alive. So yes, it does sadden me in my heart when I hear a woman say that they don't need sex or they're not a sexy person, because there's something that is lost in that. And women become quite dry and they lose their color and they lose the sparkle in their eyes, and they lose their awe in the world. There's something when they are giving their sex just to the act that something is lost in a woman.
Yes. And I'm so grateful that we've brought this into the conversation, because I think a lot of women don't feel safe with sex. And when you are able to, when I say safe with sex, when I say safe with sex, I mean safe with sex with a partner.
Mm.
And I think it's a revolutionary act to feel your own sex energy in your own body and keep it for yourself, unrelated to masturbation, unrelated to another person, and to allow that to be. And I know from my own experience that that was never Nobody ever taught me that. You know, I say this all the time about what we talk about in Good Girl to Goddess. I'm constantly saying, no one ever told me that was possible. No one ever told me that was an option. And this is one of those things I will put on a very long list of things that I have learned as an adult woman very recently that I wish I had learned when I was a teenager.
Mm.
And I would say this goes down near to the top of the list.
Yeah. We've been taught that sex is, early on as a women, we're taught that sex is, you know, well, regardless of our chosen sexuality, we're taught that our sex is for men. It's for the pleasure of a man. Um, and it's very important to reclaim and re-own that sex for ourselves. And then we feel safe. And when we feel safe in sex, we feel safe in money. It's all again about the root chakra of us, the roots survival. When we feel safe in sex, we feel safe in money, we feel safe in life, we feel safe in the world. But we have to know that sex for ourselves. I'm always saying we can't share what we haven't got. If you ask me for £5 and I don't have £5, I can't give it to you. And our sexual energy is the same. If we're not in alignment with that, if we're not in feeling of that, then how on earth can we share it? How on earth can we have that interaction with the world? So yes, sex moves through us as creation. It may be creating a relationship. It may be creating our business. It may be creating your next project. Women's sex moves through us in so many different flavors of ice cream. And when we're just using our sex for the act of sex, we're just living off banana ice cream. And we've got chocolate and strawberry and pistachio. We want to know that source of power. And I don't mean power as in power over. It's a source of our own power.
It's like a fuel.
Yeah, fuel. Yeah.
So I'm now hearing the women listening and watching saying, how do I find this feeling? I don't know what you're talking about. I know what I feel like when I'm having sex with another person. Maybe I know what it feels like, to masturbate, but this feeling of sex energy in my body, how can I cultivate that? And do you have any practical tools or guidance that you can offer?
Oh my God. I mean, again, how, for me, that question is quite challenging because for sex to feel safe, we need our body. Sex needs to feel safe to come out and play. And I'm not talking about just the act of sex. Our sexual energy needs to feel safe in our body and to feel safe then in the world to come out and express and play. So sex isn't the first step, which is, when we work together and the way the body philosophy is, it's about making your body a safe container. So therefore, that would be the first step. Start relating to your body different, making your body a safe place to be. And then you'll find that the tingles of arousal start to reappear because you're feeling safe in your own skin. And instead of those tingles of sex going, oh, wow, I'm going to go and get a partner, or wow, I'm going to masturbate, don't. Be with them, breathe into them, and then those tingles start to move. We've very much been taught that when we feel those tingles, we go out and seek sex, so we get rid of them, or we masturbate and we get rid of them, or we suppress them because they're bad, or it's not a convenient time. But when we just let them start to move in our body, the next minute you're feeling those tingles in your fingers, and you're feeling those tingles on the top of your head, and your heart starts to feel like it can open. So the first step would be, how can you relate with your body that starts to make it feel to you a safe place to be. And that may be going to go and get some support. It may be that every morning you dance because it feels good, feels joyful. It may be that curling up in a blanket regularly makes you feel safe in your body. It may be you know that there's wounding and you just can't step in, so you need some support. But I would say the body is the first step.
I really appreciate you saying that. And I want to point listeners to our first conversation, which was all about coming back into the body. And I know there are lots more practical steps and exercises and tools that women can use.
When we come from a more embodied place, everything else just slips in. When we're trying to fix money, when we're trying to fix sex, there's no ground, there's no safety. When we're coming from a place of, I'm in here, I feel safe because I have my body, I'm in my body, we can relate with money and business and sex from a much different place than from the place I'm unsafe, so I'm reaching out and I'm grasping for you and I need you. We're coming from a, I'm safe and I'm going to meet you. It's very, very different.
I have loved this conversation and I would like to come to a close. I want to ask if you can share with us where folks can find you online or a website or a newsletter or anything that you can share, and I can put it as well in the notes for the show.
Okay, this is always my tricky bit. My website is Sacred Tantric Touch, or you may find me under Michelle Roberton. And my newsletters are on Substack, which they may be a good place to begin, as in every month I cover a subject with an audio and then I offer a meditation that supports that subject or some practical experience. And I also offer a video as well, a recorded video that always, so it gives people it gives things for people to work through on a monthly basis. And they're the little things that start to slot in and make place.
Wonderful. I'll put links to all of those in the description for this episode. And I would love to just give you an opportunity to say anything else that you think might have been missing from the conversation before we close.
I mean, there's been a lot of information and maybe a lot that people will re-listen, but I feel apart from going away and noticing about how safe you feel in your body, maybe reflect upon your relationship with sex and your relationship with money and see if you can start to see the similarities in the way you feel, rather than coming from a thinking place. How do I feel in sex? What do I feel about sex? How do I feel in money? What do I feel about money? Where am I feeling that in my body? Does it tighten my throat? Does it make my stomach clench? Do I clench my buttocks and my vagina? Where is the contraction? And where is the expansion? When I feel those things, where can I feel expanded about sex and money? So our body gives us these signals of, oh my God, I feel like this. And I feel like this. So yes, always listening to our body as our compass, is into what is true about sex and money and business, because our body will tell us. And so when we start to listen to our body as we relate with sex, as we relate with money, as we relate with business, we will have a different experience and we'll start to realize that we're becoming more true to ourselves.
Place to finish. So I would just love to thank you so much, Michelle, for joining us again and for sharing your wisdom. It is so a deep, deep pleasure for me to have these conversations with you. And I would like to thank everyone who's come to listen and to watch. I would encourage you to check out our earlier conversation as well. And I'm sure that you will be back, Michelle. So we look forward to bringing you on again.
Mhm.
And yes, have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Goddess Pod.